Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Rocky Mountain House GPC Governance and Priorities Committee meeting for September 10th, 2024. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. So to start off, we have the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda this afternoon? Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, thank you. I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda for September 10th as presented.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, and that is carried. So for delegations this afternoon, we do have one here from the Rocky Chamber of Commerce. I'm not entirely sure who's coming up to speak, but please do. So we have Tim and Kevin. Come on up. So when you speak, just with the microphones, if you don't mind turning them on. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. There we go. So before we begin, I'll just introduce our group. I'm Tim Hoven. I'm the Vice President of the Rocky Chamber of Commerce. We have Michelle Metheringham, the Executive Director of the Chamber. From Unstoppable Conversations, we have Mr. Kevin Gangle and Mrs. Wendy Snyder. From West Fraser, we have Bob Jacko. And from the Rocky Credit Union, we have Randall Sugden. Our community is facing many challenges, and over the last year and a half or so, the Chamber has been in discussions with many people. Some say the biggest challenge we face now is economic, with, for example, inflation and increases to the cost of living. Others say that we're still having to deal with the slow ripple effect of the COVID regulations, with the division within our community, our businesses, our extended families, and in some cases, even people's immediate families. I think a more pressing concern that I've heard from people, though, is what I'm going to summarize as the why bother. Why bother to work harder? The government's just going to tax me more. Why bother to start this new business? It's probably going to fail due to the economic situation and all the red tape I have to follow. And for the Chamber, I think the scariest statement is why bother to work to make our community better? Because it won't make a difference. And that's usually followed by, I did that before and it didn't work because nothing changed. Over many months of discussion at the Chamber, with many different individuals and representatives from businesses and community organizations, we believe that we have the opportunity to create a positive difference for our community. We believe that we can help change the way our community thinks about itself. We need to have people think of their community in a new way. Instead of why bother, we can help them to think of how they want their community to grow and to give them the tools and inspiration to make it happen. And I'd just like to invite Mr. Kevin Gangle from Unstoppable Conversations to explain the process.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody, for having us. Real pleasure to be here and to be back. We've been getting to know your community, Wendy and I, for 6 or 8 years now. And you are just so primed to take, whatever the next step is on achieving that everything that people in your community feel is possible. I say that because we've been doing community transformation work like this for 15 years. We've been to a lot of communities around Alberta. We're going to share a little bit about what they've done. And the appetite and the commitment here is just amazing. So I think everybody has the presentation that we sent out in advance. So if you want to follow along, the very first page is what is it you're being asked to support. And the Chamber of Commerce has already approved to cover 50% of the base cost of this community transformation initiative. We were just talking to the county council, and they're considering the 25% they're being asked for and the 25% you're being asked for. The Chamber is also already covering all of the venue, logistics, food, all of those components. And one of the critical parts about the approach that this community has chosen is a shared approach and to get buy-in in advance. And Tim is speaking to that, and we'll speak more about the swell of support that already exists in the community. But we wanted to let you know that the investment involves initially a 2-day workshop. And that's a workshop where leaders can self-identify people who want to join. There'll be invitations that go out, but also an open invite. And in that 2-day workshop, there's a process whereby we reliably have people discover what's in the water. What's the unspoken conversations that are happening? What are the mental models, the views that people already have that aren't necessarily said, that sit in the background and determine what people think is possible, what they're willing to say, when they're willing to speak up, what they can listen to. And we're going to share with you what some other communities have done, but it starts there, and then the people who want to are going to form a community project, at least one, maybe more than one, and they're going to roll up their sleeves. And the people who don't want to roll up their sleeves are welcome to come back and check in and see how it went. So after that Tuesdays, there'll be 8 to 12 weeks of implementation and performance coaching on a project that is unique to this community because it's going to be created by the people in this community. And then there's going to be a community expansion session where people who were not part of that initial 2 days can come and find out what happened, what's been happening, what are the projects, the outcomes, and the measures, and they can choose to join in, and it will expand from there. And then there'll be another 8 to 12 weeks of performance and implementation coaching and bringing specific measures around those programs. So if you want to go to the next page, I'm going to tell you what transformation is in our definition of it. It's not the same thing as change. Change is inherently incremental. Change is taking something from the past and modifying it in some way to make it better. Nothing wrong with change if what you're looking for is 5%, 10%, maybe 15% difference making. But if you look at these columns that we've got, we'd say there's 3 ways that any human being, any team, any organization, any community tries to make a difference. The first way is to get the best and the right and the correct and the timely information. Now, information is great for some things, but you'll probably notice there are conversations that are happening in this community, and it's the same conversation again and again and again. Somebody has the same complaint, somebody has the same solution, somebody has the same argument. So when you're stuck in a loop for whatever reason, no matter why, more and better information isn't going to make the difference. The second way people try to get something done and change something, like significantly shift it, is the world of experience. It's the world of hard knocks. You go out in life, you try stuff, it succeeds, it fails, you interpret it, you make sense of it, you dust yourself off, and you get going again. Now, that type of learning and change is not better than informational, but it's very distinct. See, when you learned how to ride a bike, you didn't learn balance, you discovered balance. You can't explain it once you discover it, but you also can't fall off your bike. Now, that kind of learning lasts. It's where your gut makes decisions. And your gut will make decisions faster and better than your information and knowledge. How do I know? Because you forgot most of what you learned in school. Now, the third way is the world of context. It's the world of paradigm, worldview. It's how you see things that you don't know that you see things. Now, we'll say what other communities have achieved when they delve into a context-based process. But transformation is a natural human phenomenon. All of us in this room have had moments in life where something happened. Might have been a good day version or a bad day version, because it comes in both flavors. But something happened in life impacted you so hard that everything changed. You saw yourself, people, life differently, and it could never go back. Now, that's an incredibly powerful form of learning. It trumps experiential learning and informational learning, but it happens mostly at random. You don't know when and where it's going to happen. You don't get to point it at something. You kind of get what you get. So our process takes the power of transformation to discover the sort of what's in the water around here, the unspoken, the mental model. It gets it up in front of people tangibly and tactically so you can do something with it. So if you go to this next page, I'll give you a couple of examples. Lululemon is a company that invented a new category. They're killing it in the marketplace. We worked with them off and on for years. They're making money hand over fist, getting rid of the magazines. And one day something happened. It was called Amazon. And suddenly Lululemon was getting their lunch eaten. They did not know how to deal with online retail. So they got together the best and brightest who already worked for them. They had the best people in the industry, and they said, get in a room and go solve this. So that's how we do it. We get the best and the brightest in a closed room, and they solved the problem. Nothing happened. Nothing worked for months. They called us, and we used the exact same tool that we would start here to have people discover what's the hidden mental model that they don't know is running the show. Their hidden mental model was called, I know the customer best. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Who's going to know the customer better than them? They literally invented the category of athleisure wear. Now, they weren't pointing, I know the customer best at Amazon. They weren't pointing it at their other competitors. They weren't even pointing it at their customers. They were pointing at each other. Sales told marketing, I know the customer best, don't tell me what to do. Marketing told design, I know the customer best, don't tell me what to do. Design told HR and finance, don't tell me what to do, I know the customer best. They could not innovate their way out of a paper bag, even though they were literally the best and the brightest. Once they got that out of their blind spot and up in front of them, they could deal with the impact of what was unspoken. They got to get out of their own way. They went through a new innovation process, and the innovation process was called What's Best for the Customer. They got their focus back where they already thought it was. They opened up new concept stores. They created an experience that could not be replicated anywhere. Stock prices shot back up, getting written back up in the magazines. Away they go. Flaman Agriculture is a $100 million ag supply company. What they were dealing with was second generation family ownership, didn't know how to give it away to the third generation, couldn't deal with the power dynamics. They brought in new professional management to scale, and management and ownership wasn't getting along. Well, they got along, but they weren't speaking the same language, couldn't get anything done together. Most of their inventory, they didn't know where some of it was, right? So we've talked to them, we have permission to talk about this. They're amazing. And what they discovered is they were inside of a paradigm called have a hunch, buy a bunch. That's how Grandpa did it. It always worked up until now. We're at 100 million. What's the problem? But what got them to where they were after 2 generations was not going to get them to the next generation. They created a new noble cause, a new shared purpose called People Together, Doing the Right Thing, Making a Difference. That set them on a 30% year-over-year revenue growth, new level of engagement with their clients and customers when they shared all that, and they had an effectively seamless transition from second-generation ownership to third-generation ownership. Now, Bashaw I'll say a little bit more about, but with Bashaw, we walked in, it was the first time we did this kind of community transformation, exact same process that you're being invited into. And they brought together the CAO, the priest of the United Church, the principal of the school, Family Children Social Services. It was a coalition of the willing. It was the leaders who said, hey, we think there's something we can do about the fact that the meat packing plant is closed, the cheese packing plant is gone, Main Street is dead, the school is on the shutdown list. We think we can do something about that. And they discovered that the group think was called, it's not safe. I'm not going to come to that meeting because my ideas will get shot down. I'm going to stay home and wait for it to fail, and I'll come in and do it my way, the right way. They got that out of their blind spot up in front of them, and they looked at it together, straight in the eye, and they're like, oh, that's why we have 54 different not-for-profits in a town of 874 people. They were dealing with burnout, always the same people raising their hand, not enough time, not enough money, not enough energy. That's one not-for-profit for every 17 people in town, and that includes the people in diapers on both ends of the scale. They did not have a collaboration issue. They had a mindset issue. They got that up and out of the way, and they created a new shared purpose of all those different stakeholders who have different needs, different wants, different desires. And what they created, literally no community anywhere else has created this, is we exist for the fulfillment of human potential. What right does a town of 874 people have saying that we exist for the fulfillment of human potential? Well, their right is because they say so. So if you look at this next slide, they produced miracles. So they raised $1 million in just a few months with no government money. They rearranged a new relationship with the Camrose School Board, and they got new funding that hadn't existed for their arts program. They were able to do that because in a single conversation, they healed a 40-year-old rift that had been cannibalizing most of the energy and initiative in the community. Everybody knew it was there, but nobody knew how to deal with it. They have 2 graduates from their high school in big schools in New York. They went for and won the best small town in Alberta. They bought one of those giant screens, and they started hosting regional championships. The school not only stayed open, they put an expansion plan together, added new rooms to the school. Their 10-year plan was filled up in a single year. They created a 30-to-1 social return on investment. For every dollar that went in with no extra government money, that they did shockingly easily because those 54 not-for-profits were sharing it equally, not trying to take one out of every $54. And they created $30 in social and economic value for every dollar that they put in. Now, they've been at it for about 8 years, but those initial results were in the first year. They have a model now that's being studied and replicated and looking to roll out possibly nationwide. Claire's Home, when they did it, they had an economic development focus. They revitalized Main Street, 5 new businesses. They got a bunch of money that had been on the sidelines, created new partnerships and openings where people came into someone else's building and opened businesses. Flagstaff County, 10 different counties involved, lots of different mayors in the room at the same time. They resolved a 15-year-old fire agreement where some of the mayors in the room, it got revealed, one of them thought for sure if the fire was on the other side of the line, other people in the room would let other human beings die if the fire was on the wrong side of the line. Now that wasn't true, but it was a strongly held belief that was influencing every conversation. Fort McLeod was dealing with their mayor being censured and removed. You may have heard about that a number of years ago. They dealt with that through a facilitated process. They launched new diversity programs, new community initiatives, and they had new partnerships around tourism. Hanaoin and Special Areas, I think I left a blank spot there, resolved a multi-year crisis in attracting and retaining doctors. They discovered hundreds of thousands of dollars that had been sectioned away for something that didn't exist before, but nobody was touching it because nobody knew how to have the conversation. And the Dene Nation took $600,000 in COVID response funding from the federal government. And using this process, they identified 14 specific risk areas that nobody knew anything about. And they turned that $600,000 into $6 million in funding. They developed a unique on-the-land program. And they also, within 6 months, had 33 chiefs of 33 nations and 5 grand chiefs say for the first time since 1969, we speak with one voice. That is not how it had been going for 50 years. So the last piece, if you look at this deliverables and outcomes piece, these are the things that all communities will experience. Happy to answer any questions about those. I don't need to go through them in detail. But skeletons will be taken out of closets. Healing conversations will happen. There's conversational models to have that done. It happens very, very quickly. New partnerships will form. New initiatives will happen. New projects will get launched and measured and create tangible results. And many of them will be unexpected. Some of the results will be the exact same that people walked into the room for and why they raised their hand and asked to be part of it. And some will be things that people had not previously conceived. So I'm going to turn it back to Tim to wrap up our portion of it, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have after that.
I've come to learn that true change or true transformation, as Kevin said, has to come from the bottom up. It needs to start, first of all, in our own hearts with thoughtful reflection about what we want our lives to be and what we want our communities to be and our role in those communities. That talk should then spread to our dinner tables with our families and to the coffee shops with our friends and neighbors, and from there, filter up to the leaders of our community, even to these council chambers. And that is what we wish to initiate. We want this community action to be the first of many steps of positive change as our people, our businesses, our community organizations start to see their community and the world in a new way. And where will it end? How far can this go? That depends on the people of Rocky Mountain House in Clearwater County. There is no roadmap for this. There are no easy, simple solutions anymore. If there were those easy solutions, these issues would have been resolved many, many years ago. Some people have said that this may be risky to do. This community effort may not get the results we want. The real risk, though, is not to try. The real risk to our community is to do nothing. You will have noticed we have a page with a list of businesses in support. I've got here the 89 signed letters of support from members of the chamber all throughout the town and the county who believe in this initiative. And I believe Michelle just told me before we came in that there is 1 or 2 more that came in today. So this initiative is important to the members and our businesses in the community. We would like to begin this process in October with the community meetings in November. We've talked about perhaps waiting till the new year, but it just seems like it's too close. I believe that the time is short to get community involvement. We have a municipal election in a year, and I have concerns that it's going to be lost in the midst of the chaos of a federal election. So the quicker, the earlier we can get town people and county people thinking about what's important to them for their lives and their municipality, the sooner we can do that, the better. So on behalf of the chamber, the many businesses and community organizations who are supporting this proposal, I wish to thank the town council for listening to our request today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're open to questions if there's time.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Thank you guys so much for your presentation. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you for coming in and presenting to us and giving us this information. One of the questions I have is who would be participating, like from the community, and what kind of numbers do you expect from that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the process works really well, anywhere from 20 to 50 to up to maybe about 100 people. And who participates is a coalition of the willing. It's those who have a vision for the future, who are interested in rolling up their sleeves, and they want to make a significant difference, leveraging all the strengths that exist, and with a willingness to deal with whatever the weaknesses are. Now, what we've recommended and what the Chamber's agreed to is there'll be probably a targeted list of invitations for people who should consider it, at least someone from their organization, because we want diversity. Businesses, not-for-profits, different size of companies, people of different ages, coming from different backgrounds, people who've been here for a long time, not been here for a long time, different ethnicities. We want that diversity of thought. So in addition to those targeted invitations, at least to specific organizations, there's going to be an open call out to the community. Now, we might have to cap it at some point in time, but basically anybody who wants to put their hand up and say, I'm interested in being a leader, because it's not about a particular position or authority, it's about passion and commitment.
Councillor Auld.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Thanks, gentlemen, for the presentation. The idea behind this is good, but it reminds me a lot of the Ignite Rocky Mountain House that was formed in the Chamber as well. Aware of that initiative. It started off strong and eventually fizzled out to nothing. I'm just wondering if your project implementation and performance coaching, those 2 8 to 12 week sessions, what does that look like to keep people engaged and moving this forward?
It's a great question. So one thing that is distinct is the methodology, because this is about the discovery of blind spots, and it's an epiphany-based project, which is kind of a strange thing to say. When I said there's those moments in life where your eyes open for whatever happens. See, there's going to be reliably a massive burst of creativity and energy, and then that gets focused inside a particular way to approach projects. Because the projects are not an A to B traditional planning where we've done an environmental scan and come in and tell you, do it the way this other community did it, or if you'd follow these steps the way that somebody else did it. This is going to be incredibly custom to the people who are in the room, what they want, and they're going to create the project, and then we're going to give them a container inside of which to focus that energy. So one thing that will be distinct is a conversational model where people can have very direct, very straight, very open and honest conversations with each other, where they can say and hear things that previously they weren't able to say or hear, if that makes sense. So that's going to have a reciprocal, kind of a cascading effect in terms of the energy, and then reliably that produces outcomes. And that's what the people in the community want. They want to know what happened, what was the result, what did I get out of that? So when Bashaw, within a matter of days, healed that 40-year-old rift with the school, nobody thought that was going to happen. Eyes get open, ears perk up, people are like, what the heck happened? The people who did it might have even said, I can't explain it, but it worked and I'm going to do it again. So there's a ripple effect that happens and more people come in. It feeds energy into the system, and it's not dependent on anybody outside. It's not dependent on the provincial government or somebody else. It's not required on a continued influx of cash or any of those components. It really is community owned because they created it and they own it.
So I'm still a little confused. What do those 2 8 to 12 week programs look like? Like, is it a facilitator on scheduled meetings? Is it, what are those 2 different components? What does that look like?
Yeah, great. It looks like me and Wendy getting on a Zoom call with the people who were in the room who created the project. And it has them reporting back on the specific actions that they promised to take, and reporting back on the results and the effectiveness of those conversations and those initiatives. And then we send them back out onto the playing field to keep getting the job done. So it's really reporting back on the effectiveness of the project as we work the way through. And then they will have set their own milestones, both at kind of the 8 to 12 week, and then we do that community expansion, and we set another set of milestones. So people are reporting back on what they said that they wanted to accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
And by the way, not all 100 people need to be on that Zoom line. It's probably 12, 15, and it would be based on it's going to be specific to the project. So.
I just have a question as well. I just want a little bit of clarification. So on our delegation form, it does mention just a letter that had come from the Chamber, dear Town Council. So in here it had said that the town would be expected to pay the fee $13,750, but then on this that we're looking at today, it's a different amount, $10,837.50. So I'm just curious which one is the.
It is the one you received today.
Okay.
Since we sent that original letter, we re-looked at the budget. We had additional staff training that we took off. We thought if we need that after this initial project is done, we can get that then. Unstoppable Conversations also dropped their fee. There's such great community support for this project. that we thought it was, it's worth dropping the budget to make it more, increase the odds of success.
No, fair enough. Okay, thank
The
you.
lower number is the right answer, right? Is that-
Okay, yeah, I mean, it sounds good. Sounds better. Counselor Phillips?
Thank you. So, of the amount of 10,837.50, that's just a one-shot, there's no ongoing things after the fact? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
None of these communities previously have gone back to the well.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments? Okay, so I think we are good for now. Thank you guys again so much for coming in and for everyone from the chamber that is here.
Thanks so
And-
much.
And thank you for your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I think we can carry on here. So adoption of the previous minutes, how did that look to everybody? Any issues with the previous minutes? Looks okay. Oh, Counselor Ald.
Well, if there is no question, I was just gonna make a motion to adopt the GPC committee meetings June 11th, 2024.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, and that is carried. So now we are moving on to delegation business. So just opening up the floor if anybody has any comments or anything they'd like to say about it. Counselor Musker?
Yes, thank you. It totally captured my attention. I would like to see us look into this maybe a little deeper. I'm not so sure about the timing of it. I would like to see what the county's interest level is on this, considering the timing. It shouldn't be a factor. Unfortunately, it probably will be, but the election next year, right? And Kevin actually brought it up himself, and so did Mr. Hoven. So, but honestly, it has captured my attention.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to? Counselor Hutchinson?
Thank you. I was thinking along the same line. Just given the timeline that they've given us, I see the importance of if we're going to go forward with something like this, that it be sooner than later. I was going to suggest moving this to budget, but time-wise, I almost, not that, I'm not going to say it's a waste of time if we waited until December or the program to start January, February, but mindsets do change with the elections coming up. So I guess I would be looking at admin if it would be something that we could look at how it could be funded, and would that be something to bring back to another GPC meeting, or does it, or a regular council meeting? Either?
So, Dr. Mayor, so to answer the question, if you're looking at amending the budget, we would need to bring it to a regular council meeting. So we could provide a report to council where the funding could come from and bring it to a regular council meeting.
Thank you. Counselor Phillips?
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, no, October, November start date is ambitious, for sure. Just simply because there's nothing in place right now, and trying to get, 20 to 50 to 100 people schedules to work and organize is challenging for sure. But yeah, I agree with Councillor Musker. It's something to definitely talk about for sure. How soon, obviously, if we're talking in October, we're pretty much gonna have to talk about this at our next council meeting, which is next Tuesday. Is that a realistic ask, Mr. Kraus, or, okay? Okay.
Thank you. Counselor Hutchinson?
Thank you. Just because I have been involved previously with this group, and they've been meeting, I think it's probably been a year now, and there's been about 15, 18 people that have been present working on it. So it's not like there isn't a plan in place. Like I said, that they've got some history. They've been working together with a group of residents on it to kind of develop what the need is and what direction, and that's kind of what Unstoppables. Whoop. So they've had some background, they've had some work done previously to them being the delegation.
Thank you. I think for myself, I had an idea as to what maybe I thought it was going to be in terms of the presentation, but it was actually different than what I thought and what the vision was for the whole thing. And so I agree with you, Councillor Musker. It did capture my attention. I thought it was an interesting presentation. So for myself, like, I would be curious to have it come back to a regular council meeting where it would come from, potentially from the budget, and just see from there. But I agree that we should maybe try to time and see what the county does as well with their end of it, and then just kind of go from there. But is there any more discussion on this? If not, looking for a motion. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a motion that we bring this back to our next council meeting on September 17th. Sorry, I had to look at that on my calendar. The next council meeting on September 17th to discuss the implications of where the money would come from a budget and proceeding on next steps.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Councillor Schipel.
Can we just add that after communication with the county to see where they're at as well? Because I think it's critical that they're a partner, so.
Councillor Hutchinson.
I don't quite understand what that means. Their meeting's not till the 24th, so are you saying to meet with the county and, no? What's that look like?
I think before we approve it, we want to make sure that we have a partner. I mean, we got the chamber who's already said that they are going to be in it. If we decide that we're going to be in it, I think it's also critical that the county be in it as well. They're a quarter of the financial aspect, so I think somehow we have to just make sure that we tie that in, and that may mean that we have to prolong when we make our final decision. I think next council meeting, we're going to find out how the funds are going to get, how the funds are going to be available to us, from where. And then the second part of that is having the county, knowing where they're at in terms of involvement in financial, the financial end as well. Does that clarify where I'm at?
Yeah, I guess if we did, at our council meeting, decide we wanted to go forward, I guess that motion could say, contingent on the county approving as well.
Correct. That's, I'm looking
Okay.
for Councillor Phillips to amend his motion to add some component about the county's willingness to participate.
I think, you know, bringing it forward to our next council meeting for discussion, I think that would be part of our discussion, is if we do move forward, we would want the county's contribution as well. I would see this no different as football lighting or anything like that, where we can make a decision saying, yes, we will, you know, yes, we're in favor of a certain project contingent on the county matching that dollar amount. So I would think that we could make that at next council meeting. I don't think it needs to be part of the motion today. The motion today is just to bring it to the next meeting to discuss and look at further steps.
Does that help, Councillor Schipel?
Sure.
Okay. So when it comes back to our next regular council meeting, then we'll look at a motion stipulating something like that from there, potentially. Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Was it you, Councillor Phillips, that made that motion? So no more discussion on that from the looks of it. So I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor of the motion and none opposed, and that is carried. Okay, so moving ahead, we don't have any old business, but for new business, we have the Clean Energy Improvement Program for non-residential. And we have Ms. Hartling and Ms. Quinlan here today. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
You can start whenever you are ready.
Okay, thank you. At the June 4th council meeting, Councillor Hutchinson made a notice of motion that council request that administration bring back a report regarding the Clean Energy Improvement Program and to include a non-residential program under that program. I've included some of the legislation in the report, but I won't go through it specifically unless there's any questions regarding the legislation. Under the strategic plan, building our local economy, the Clean Energy Improvement Program does offer opportunity for local contractors. We've seen a little bit of response. I think we have one contractor in particular that participated in the program, but also built some of his solar energy programs and was able to expand beyond the boundaries or beyond the region through the program. So, it was beneficial to him. Under the Safe and Healthy Communities, the Clean Energy Improvement Program has established our municipality as leaders, providing guidance and information to other municipalities. The program has grown significantly since it began. We were the first in the province to introduce a Clean Energy Improvement Program. So we have provided support through that. Under communication and citizen engagement, the Clean Energy Improvement Bylaw recognizes the non-residential component of the program. So if council chose to go down that road, the bylaw does already recognize non-residential in the bylaw. Financial. Through the residential portion of the program, we were provided a significant grant through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund. There was a total of $776,400 combined with a grant of $618,800. Those help offset some of the administrative costs and marketing costs and whatnot for the administration for the Clean Energy Improvement Program. They also provide grants that are available through the residential portion for both the pre and post energy audits that are required, as well as a portion of the grant is for the capital improvement to the dwelling. The funding is provided only for the residential portion. There's no funding available for the non-residential portion. Through the funding that was available, there was a certain amount of money that gets applied to the grants or to the loans that are given out. There's 69% of the loans that are given out are based on the 0% interest that's provided through FCM. The other 31% is offered through a line of credit. Again, that would not be something that would apply to a non-residential portion. So it would be like 100% line of credit. There's also a 5% administration fee that would be charged for a non-residential program. Currently, the administration fee is covered again through the FCM funding. And that's paid to the province actually. So under the bylaw and under the agreement with Alberta municipalities or the program administrator, 90% of the program administration fee would go back to the province for their administration of the program, because we have to work with them directly for any program, which includes the residential programs that we currently offer, as well as any potential future non-residential programs. We would retain 10% to offset our costs. Organizationally, there is additional workload that would be placed on staff for managing the program. Planning and Community Development is currently responsible for managing the residential program. We also work with Corporate Services and our Communications Coordinator. They play an important role in that as well, because it's the Corporate Services that would register the tax that would be applied to the property. Staff would be involved in a similar way for a non-residential portion. As mentioned, the town of Rocky Mountain House was the first to implement the program for the residential portion, and that was done on November 4th, 2021. There are currently 2 non-residential programs in Alberta, the City of Edmonton and Sturgeon County. The City of Grand Prairie is also expected to launch a non-residential program in the coming years. The residential program portion of the program has, again, not received any funding to offset any municipal costs. So the way that the program would have to run would be either through a line of credit, or if council chose through like a reserve fund, that it would be a municipal reserve fund. There's, I know that there was Alberta municipalities, there was a resolution that went forward regarding access to provincial funding, I guess through the, I think it's capital funding. What's the name of that program? It is, give me just a moment, I'll find the name here. Local authorities capital financing. So that resolution, I believe, has gone forward, but it still has to go to legislature, and there's no change to, there's no access for municipalities to access that currently. A non-residential program, there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things that would come forward in terms of the implications of having a non-residential program in town. So there's the cost of a pre and post energy audit. So similar to the residential portion, a non-residential portion would have to have a pre and post energy audit. And it's called an ASHRAE energy audit. The cost of that is somewhere in the vicinity of $3,000 to $10,000, and that would be the responsibility of the applicant. ASHRAE refers to the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. So that energy audit would be dependent on, the cost of that would be dependent on the scope of the project as well as the size of the building. There's also the 5% administration fee. So on a $100,000 project, it would be a $5,000 fee that the applicant would be required to pay. 90% of that application fee would go to the province. We would retain 10%. There would be higher lending rates because currently the residential program, again, benefits from the funding that's offset by the FCM grant. So any rates that would be applied to a non-residential program would have to, be run as a cost recovery type of loan. And then there'd be no town incentives unless council chose to offer an incentive. Currently, like mentioned, there are grants available. There would be no grants available for a non-residential portion unless council decided otherwise. There would also be an increased workload and limited funds to offset the costs of administration and marketing. And then there is a bit of a higher risk to the municipality because of the, non-residential programs or participation. There would be potentially higher costs and higher loans that would be going out for a non-residential program versus residential. Currently, residential has a cap of $50,000, and a non-residential cap is $500,000. So that's through the Municipal Government Act. I think our bylaw has it lower. Cap is 100 or 500,000 for non-residential. That's right. So.
Thank you for that. I'll go to Councillor Phillips. I've seen him first, and then Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. So just a quick question. So if we did go forward with this program, would this, the dollar amounts, would that be included into our debt ceiling? Would that affect our debt ceiling?
No,
The line of credit wouldn't
none
do
of
that?
the Clean Energy Improvement Program loans that are going out from the municipality are included in the debt.
Okay.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all the work. When I first put the motion forward, again, not having all the correct information, and you've certainly covered any questions I had. I wonder if the next step for us, I mean, depending on where council feels this will go, but would be to FCM with a resolution on something to include non-residential clean energy efficient program in additional funding or something along that line, as opposed to having the burden on the municipality, which again, I appreciate the work, but I don't think that that's the direction I would want to go to.
The City of Edmonton's pilot program that they ran did have access to FCM funding for the pilot program, but their new program does not have access to non-residential funding.
Okay. Councillor Ald.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I agree. Thank you very much for all this information. It's very concise and clear. Until the federal parties decide that they're gonna promote and help fund these programs, I don't think there's any upside to going down this road right now. It would cost more to the guys than just going to get their own loan and doing the work themselves, so I thank you very much for this.
You're
Appreciate it.
very welcome. You know, and with change, with the two non-residential, possibly 3 non-residential programs going, there might be changes that come in the future, but at this time, the implications are, outlined there. And
For sure.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Just with the work that you've done so far, if there is funding coming from federal down the road, we're in a pretty good position to go down that path. We don't have to start from scratch with all the work you guys have already put into this, correct?
Yeah, and we keep in communication with Alberta municipalities, the program administrator through Alberta municipalities. So if changes do come about, that's certainly information that we can bring to council, where it may make a non-residential program more attractive. And we can certainly bring that information back when that information comes available.
Councillor Musker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another great report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer.
I'm trying to boil this down, and my understanding is we would just become a lender of money, no different than a financial institution. So in that case, I would prefer that a financial institution who's much better at managing risk than a municipality would just be available for that.
Thank you for that. I agree. I don't think now is maybe the right time. Be something to look at if some grants or something comes down the pipe. But I think for right now, I think we are best to just kind of leave it. Councillor Schiphol.
Thank you. I think hearing what everybody says around the table, I'm prepared to make the motion.
Sure.
And that motion be, let it be resolved, the council instruct administration to continue with only the residential portion of the clean energy improvement program at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor and none opposed, and that is carried. Thank you very much for all your work.
Worship. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
You too.
Okay.
Okay, so moving forward, we have Municipal Energy Manager position. And we have Mr. Ament coming up to speak to us on that. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. Yeah, so I'm back before you today to basically provide the results of my search for a partner in a clean energy management manager position. Council, I presented about the program in June at the GPC meeting. I'm not going to go through the details of what the program entails. Basically, through my research, discussion with the staff at the Municipal Center for Climate, the action, MCCAC, we'll use their acronym, it's a mouthful. I asked them if they had any inquiries from other communities looking to partner, and their answer was no. They suggested still not a bad idea for us to submit an expression of interest, gets us in the queue, whether we decide to go down the road of doing something or applying for funding in the future. The program is accepting applications through the end of 2025. If we were interested in pursuing the Municipal Energy Manager For a 2-year program, the deadline is December 13th of this year. Without having a municipal partner, between Mr. Kraus and myself, we did reach out to the county. I reached out and spoke with the CAO from Sylvan Lake. Sylvan Lake they're managing the program internally, so they really weren't interested in partnering. So at this point, I don't know how much more I have to say about the program. I know coming up at our service level retreat, we'll be discussing the need for potentially another maintenance person. Our current maintenance manager has taken the Municipal Energy Champion training through MCCAC when the program was first launched in 2021. So we've got a little bit of that background knowledge that we can apply, but unfortunately, his current role doesn't give him a lot of time to spend on the energy management side of things. The report that we have coming to council in October from our facility life cycle assessments may lend some more information as to what we need to do on asset management. In talking with our CO2, again, that could be perhaps a combined role for our facility maintenance manager, is doing some more energy assessments, dealing with asset management, as well as potentially supervising, the staff needed to maintain all of our facilities. So at this point, unless council has some other questions, either myself or Mr. Kraus could perhaps provide some more, information.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Hutchinson?
Thank you. So you said that the deadline for application, December 13th, 2024, to take advantage of 2 years. If we did the expression of interest, there's no commitment at this time. We could continue and talk possibly at the service level review. But would it be beneficial to have that expression of interest in, and if we chose not to follow through with it, we can just remove our name?
Yes, that's how in speaking with their staff members, there's a whole process in the expression of interest which outlines our need and those types of things, a fairly detailed application that we would go through, but he suggested going through that there's no commitment that you'd have to follow through, but it gets you sort of in the queue and lets them know that your community is thinking about, doing something along the energy management role. And certainly having worked with the MCCAC on the pool project when we had the CHP units was funded through their program, the Municipal Energy Champion program. So they're familiar with our community already, but certainly filling out an expression of interest is certainly something we can do internally. No real deadline to get that done. The one deadline was if we wanted to go down the road and apply for 2 years worth of funding.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I am looking for a motion. Councillor Hutchinson?
I would make the motion, be it resolved that council instruct administration to proceed with submitting an expression of interest for a municipal energy manager to the Municipal Climate Change Action Center and reviewing the hiring of an MEM at the service level retreat in the fall.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call that to a vote. Those in favor of the motion and none opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. Okay, so moving ahead, we have 7.3 Community Grant Policy. And we have Mr. Schwader coming up to speak on that. Oh, he's leaving. Sorry. Mr. Kraus, or I see Ms. Breeze's name is on the RFD as well.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So council has requested that the grant policy come back to a GPC for council to review. I think a lot of the previous conversation was just clarification, like where events must be held within town. So we are just presenting it to council for council's input and review.
Thank you for that. So does anyone have any comments or anything they'd like to say on this particular topic? I think for myself, I'd like to have more of a conversation at service level with it, have a more fulsome conversation. I don't know if anyone feels otherwise, but if someone has something they'd like to mention, go ahead, Councillor Hutchinson.
That's what I was gonna say as well. It would be nice to revisit the entire policy. We made changes last year, and to just have a look and see how is that program going? Is it working for the community? Do we need to make changes? So I think bringing it back to service level would be the place to have the discussion.
Thank you. Do we have any other further discussion on that? If not, I'm looking for a motion. If someone would like to make one. Councillor Hutchinson, please.
Be it resolved that council ask administration to bring the community grant policy to service level for further discussion.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor of the motion and none opposed, and that is carried. Thank you. Are we wanting to take a break at this time, or is everyone okay to press on? Take a 10-minute break? Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and do that before we move on. Thank you. Okay, so moving forward in our agenda, we are at 7.4, so we have the town flag policy. So I will turn that over to Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. So council has requested the flag policy be brought up to a GPC meeting for council's review. I think what prompted this was the request for special organization flags and how those are handled by removing their town flag and shifting everything over. So we've brought this back for council's input and review, and provided examples of other flag policies from other municipalities that are probably a little bit more extensive than ours for council's consideration.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion or questions for admin on this? Councillor Musker.
Yes, I prepared some comments regarding
Okay.
this agenda item. So I'm really glad this item is on our agenda today, because I've been looking forward to having a discussion on our flag policy with my council peers. I feel any discussion we have regarding our town flag policy should include how we currently treat our town flag. There are times when our town flag is removed from display in order to make room for other flags to be flown. This practice appears, and I stress appears, this practice appears to be in contravention of the rules for precedence from the Department of Canadian Heritage, as well as the Alberta Protocol for Flag Displays. The only instance in which it would be appropriate for our municipal flag to be removed from display is to make room for the flag of a higher order of government when there are not enough flag poles for every flag. As you know, I've only been a member of this council for 6 months, so I'm not sure whether it was this council that instituted this practice, or if it simply inherited the practice from a previous council, led by a previous chief elected official. And it really doesn't matter. But today we have the opportunity to begin the process of righting a wrong and restoring the dignity and honor that the town of Rocky Mountain House flag deserves. I would like to see this council address this by providing clarity in our existing flag flying policy, and I believe that it can be accomplished through an amendment to the existing policy. As councillors, I believe one of our duties is to encourage and model civic pride. One of the easiest and most visible ways to do that is to make sure our flag is flown whenever possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have more discussion on that from anybody? Councillor Hutchinson.
Did I miss it somewhere in our policy? Does it say anything about special flags?
So Acting Mayor to Councillor Hutchison, so under 1 is the order of precedence, where flags of organizations are the lowest of precedence.
Go ahead.
Yep. So, I mean, that's the order of precedence, but was there not anything ever written about having a special request? And I remember having the conversations before, but I don't know where, you know, like where we'd hire or we'd hang a flag for, or fly a flag for 2 weeks for a special group, or, like, I know we've had the conversations, I just don't know where that is.
No, so that's handled by council resolution, and they can adjust the policy. So council passes a motion to fly a certain flag, then the administration flies that flag and goes in an order of precedence. And because we only have so many limited flag poles, so 5 out here, without worrying about insulting another organization, we always lower the town flag and shift everything over.
Thank you for that. Councillor Phillips, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Musker.
So one thing I would like to see in this policy is addressing special flags. Simply because we get the requests, and sometimes it's a request for a day, sometimes a week, sometimes a month, and I would like to have in our policy a maximum amount of time. I believe a month is too long to fly any particular flag. I would like to see it set at maybe a week. But I think we need to address it in here as to how we do it and how long we do it. And not necessarily for who we do it, because that will be council resolution, but just for how long, and it should be in here, because now we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants every time we get a request.
Fair enough. Councillor Musker?
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. My comments were specifically to halting the process of lowering our town flag to fly another flag. And I think we can start there. We can have a more fulsome conversation about flying other flags and how we would go about that. But I would like the policy to prioritize, in order of precedence, our town flag. Like I said, as councillors, we have a duty, a responsibility, a role to encourage and model civic pride, and this is a very easy way to do it. Let's be proud of our flag. And I understand that the practice is to not insult anybody else, that flags are flying, but I'm not exactly sure how this is not insulting. So, and I'm not speaking as a councillor, I'm speaking as a resident. So, in council chambers as a councillor. But as a resident, I find that offensive. So and I assure you, I'm not alone. So we have to come up with a way of doing this appropriately, and I'm just asking to follow the precedent thing, and to stop taking down the town flag in order to fly another flag in its place. It's just inappropriate from my perspective.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Schiphol?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Now that I got that under control. I agree with you, Councillor Musker. I think that we need to have the town flag up there. I think that's critical. The City of Calgary's bylaw, when it comes to duration, says up to a maximum of 1 week for putting up someone else's flag. And I think that that makes sense. You know, a month is too long, and so I think we just need to figure out how to change our policy to address both of those items. I think they're both important, and have both come up for comment, or at least the time one has definitely been a discussion around this table before. So I think we do something like the City of Calgary has done for a maximum of 1 week or up to 1 week, and to address it for the municipal flag as well at the same time.
Thank you for that. Councillor Phillips, and then I'll go to Councillor Alt.
Yeah, I agree. Any other flag, I think a week is maximum. I don't think we should be doing it for any longer than that. But one suggestion, and I'm not a flagpole expert by any means, but we do have a flagpole out here, and I realize that it's the higher flagpole, which means it should be running the Canadian flag. Is there a way of modifying this existing flagpole to bring it down a little bit, so that it's not any longer the highest flagpole, so that we could run special flags on that one? I'm not a flagpole expert, so I don't know how that would turn out.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, to Councillor Phillips. No, we can't modify the flagpole by cutting it and trying to re-weld the base and all of that. I mean, it would have to be, if you wanted it to be lower than the remainder, it would be a new flagpole. So we're probably looking at $4,000 to $5,000 for that, because the base, that's an older flagpole, the bases would be different and so forth. So.
Okay. Councillor Alt, and then I'll go to Councillor Musker.
I agree with Council Musker as well. I think we should follow the order of precedence, and I believe our town flag should remain. And we can juggle the other courtesy flagpoles that we have up there. They don't always have to have the same one come down. I think we can alternate that, so we're not always taking down the same one and possibly offending anybody. I agree. Keep the special flags for a week, and we have our town flag always flying as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Musker?
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. Could we maybe break it into two separate motions? One regarding the flying of the town flag, and a different one regarding the duration of flying auxiliary flags?
I think we can do that, Mr. Kraus, if that sounds okay.
It's possible. Because some of the conversation then talks about, you mentioned a separate pole, and that was in some of the documents that were provided by administration. Some municipalities have a courtesy pole, right, for flying those flags. which is a completely a different thing from what I was addressing. So I would like to see two separate motions. Before I make the motion, I would like to read kind of what I'm thinking would go in the motion for consideration. Would that be okay?
Sure, yeah.
Just so you know what's coming. That the Town of Rocky Mountain House flag will be flown at all properties and facilities owned and operated by the Town of Rocky Mountain House where there are sufficient flagpoles to do so. It's not to be removed from display except to make room for the flag of a higher order of government, and it is to be flown in order of precedence according to the Department of Canadian Heritage and the Alberta Protocol for Flag Displays.
Thank you. So that wasn't
That was not a
wasn't
motion.
Okay. Thank you, just clarifying. Counselor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I understand the policy as it sits right now does cover all of that. As the policy is written right now, it's got the order. It doesn't have, it doesn't say anything about switching one flag for another or anything like that. So that's how I read it. Am I correct, Mr. Kraus?
So the way it's written, yes, we follow the order of precedence. If we take down the town flag and keep the other flags in the order of precedence, then we're meeting the policy. So, but, because there's nothing specific in the policy saying which flag we remove when council authorizes a special flag.
Counselor Musker.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. So then following that line of thinking, it doesn't really matter which flag we take down.
As long as the flags that are flying are in the order of precedence.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's nothing to stop us from lowering the flag of the province of Alberta or Treaty 6 or anything, but it's always the town flag. And I'd just like to stop that practice. Thank you.
Counselor Phillips.
Just gonna throw a wild idea out there. On various buildings around town, you can always see that there's a flagpole attached to the building itself. Is there a way of making the special flags part of something that's just attached to our building and not part of our main flagpole assembly? Is that a way of sufficing and making these special flag requests doable? Yeah, I don't know who else to ask other than you, Mr. Kraus.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Counselor Musker.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. That would be a courtesy flagpole, and for flying flags that are not part of our flag rotunda. So those would be more or less permanent. They wouldn't change, but we'd have a courtesy pole. Some municipalities have that. Calgary has it, Grand Prairie has it. I'm sure a lot have it. And that's where you fly flags temporarily to recognize organizations and things like that. It's something to consider. I would rather that not be part of this. Maybe something we look at service level and certainly in budget, because there will be a cost associated with it. I really would just like to deal with the way we're doing things now and iron the wrinkles out of it.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion on this? If not, then I am looking for a motion. Counselor Hutchinson.
Well, I feel that the policy as it's written is sufficient to cover exactly what Councillor Musker has been talking about. And I would like to see maybe an addition to the policy or any additions to a special flagpole or anything to be brought back to service level. As like Councillor Musker pointed out, there is a budgetary cost to that. My first preference would be to have a designated special pole somewhere. Where that is, I don't know.
Because I can make a motion.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't think I made a motion, did I? No.
Go ahead, Counselor Musker.
I would be pleased to make the motion. Be it resolved that council instruct administration to prepare a draft flag flying protocol, policy 021-2020, with the following amendments. that the Town of Rocky Mountain House flag will be flown at all properties and facilities owned and operated by the Town of Rocky Mountain House where there are sufficient flagpoles to do so. It is not to be removed from display except to make room for the flag of a higher order of government, and it is to be flown in order of precedence according to the Department of Canadian Heritage and Alberta Protocol for Flag Displays. This draft will be presented to Council to review at the Governance and Priorities Committee meeting on October the 8th, 2024.
Okay, thank you for your motion. Just for admin, does that give you, that does give enough time
I
to
will
address
email
that?
it to you,
Okay.
yeah.
Do we have any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Hutchinson?
Does that, I mean, that doesn't state anything about bringing it back to service level.
That would be another motion.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Phillips?
Thank you. So I can appreciate Councillor Musker's motion, but I think our policy already states that. If we just follow this policy in the order of precedence, it would be followed. I just,
Go ahead.
Thank you. It's not being followed. So that's why I want some clarity here, just so that it's clear cut, so that this is what we do and this is why we do it. Yeah, the order of precedence is in the policy, but, you know, we're technically meeting the precedence standards by removing the flag and shifting everybody over. I'm not sure we're following the spirit of it. So I would just like to have it clearer on what we're going to do as a council and as a town, okay? Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you for that. As everyone understands the motion that Councillor Musker had said, no one needs any clarification? Councillor Hutchinson?
I forgot the motion already. But if we just amended the policy to remove flags of organizations, would that not cover the gist of what you're getting at? Because then we wouldn't be removing any of the flags at any time.
Oh, you're waiting for
Oh,
me.
yeah,
Thank you.
sorry, go ahead.
That's something to consider. Maybe that's one of the options that administration wants to bring back at the next GPC meeting to correct this. It doesn't have to be this, I just want it to be moving in this direction. So, like I said, it will be a draft presented back to council at the next GPC meeting for our review. We can have more discussion at that time too.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, and I see none, I will go ahead and I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor of the motion? And there's none opposed, and that is carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so moving ahead, correspondence for action, 8.1. Oh, Councillor Hutchinson, sorry.
Just then I'll make the motion
Oh, yes, okay.
to bring the, I got the wrong one down here, the special flag request to, no, not request, special flag. Someone help me.
I know what you're getting at.
Flying a special flag to service, courtesy flag to service level. With the possibilities of purchasing a special flagpole.
Do we have any discussion on that motion? Would we make that decision about the special flagpole at service level, or is that something that would be discussed at budget? Or I guess ahead of time to put it in the budget?
Yeah, so Acting Mayor, I think the discussion council wants to have is when we fly a special flag, the duration of a special flag, and if council wants a special flag pulled forward. So I think it's, a little broader conversation.
Okay, so, Kate, no, that sounds good. So any discussion on that? And seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. So those in favor of that motion? And none opposed, that is carried. Okay, so now we will move along to correspondence for action. So we have 8.1, AB Munis, the 2024 resolutions book. So, just for myself, just to ask my fellow counselors, how do we want to go through this? Because there is quite a few. Do we want to go one by one? If there's no questions or comments for one, we skip over to the next one and then just kind of proceed that way? Is that the best way, do you feel, Councillor Phillips?
I've looked at all of these and read them. I would suggest if anyone has any one particular one that they want to highlight, I would suggest maybe doing it that way. Just my preference, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I guess if there's any ones maybe that admin wants to speak on, but I guess, I don't know. Is that the best way? You guys want to do it then? Just if anyone has one they want to mention? Or has questions or dialogue on? Councillor Hutchinson?
I guess my thoughts were once we are at AB Munis conference and when these things come up to be voted on, that, or the opportunity to speak for or against, that council's all on the same page and agreeing with them all. So I don't know if we necessarily have to go through each one, but if whoever has ones to highlight and want to discuss, maybe go through it that way.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't thinking to necessarily go through everyone, but just we can start with number one if there's something, if not number two, if there's something there, and just kind of, that way we've brought all of them up. But if I don't know, I'm open to how you guys want to discuss, because there is quite a few. So sorry, can you say your preference again, Councillor Hutchinson? Was
I just thought if anybody had ones that are highlighted and
that they wanted to speak
that they
on?
want to speak on. I don't know if Mr. Kraus wants to add some of his knowledge to
on any of them. That's
on any of
why,
them.
yeah. Kate, well, we can do it that way if someone just wants to point out anything that they want to speak on. So if anybody wants to start, go ahead, Councillor Phillips.
There was no one resolution that I thought needed to be discussed. They're very, very straightforward. Some of them don't apply to us, like fires on lakes. I mean, that doesn't apply to us, but there was nothing here that I found that I thought needed to be pulled out, but other councillors may see that there is something that they want to discuss.
So I'll ask the question then, if any councillors have ones that they would like to discuss, to please do so. Councillor Hutchinson?
Well, it was a while ago since I read all these. I reviewed them, but I had B3, Provincial Education Property Tax Reform. Just the cuts in the LGFF funding. 30% of property tax bill is submitted to the province and the money is collected for education. Tax is higher than what municipalities receive in funding, but we're spending more in infrastructure. So I don't have to find that now. Necessarily agree with just the resolution. I mean, I don't know how we want to go about this. It's definitely something that I think we should be looking at more through while we're at Alberta municipalities, and if people feel that that's something that's important to comment on or not comment on. I don't know if anybody wants to speak at AB Munis. That's an option. Deer in headlights?
Yeah, a little bit. Councillor Phillips?
Well, I mean, when we're at AB Munis and these resolutions are going forth and they're presented, I mean, there's the presenter who's, in this case would be the City of St. Albert, and then there's the potential of people speaking against the motion, and then should there be I mean, these are always ebbs and tides of conversations that go through the resolutions, that there may be a time when there's something against a resolution and we may feel that we are for one, and at that moment we may want to speak. I don't know how we can prepare ourselves for something like that in the eventuality of a conversation happening during resolutions. because each one is gonna change. Some have no opposition and they just get voted on, so.
Might need to have some dialogue as we sit there and.
As we're sitting at the table amongst ourselves while these resolutions are going on, we could have some discussion at the table while it's happening. I think that may be more prudent.
Mhm. Counselor Hutchinson, do you have any other ones that you have, like, particular questions on that maybe admin can clarify? Any questions that you might have, or?
Well, the B7 was one, Alberta First Responders Radio Communication System Equipment Funding. While I agree that the AFRAC system should be available for everybody to use as an important tool, but to have that one funded for populations under 3,000, I believe is unfair, I think. I mean, we've spent the money, the town has already participated in this, so if, why should the population under 3,000 be getting funding for it? If they're getting funding for it, then we should be funded accordingly as well.
Mhm. That's a valid point. Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to mention?
So, sorry, I just for clarification, Councillor Hutchinson, so are you saying you want to speak against this motion at AB Munis? Or just vote against the motion?
I mean, I guess we, again, I don't know how this process is working, but I don't know how does the rest of council feel about that, because it is something that we could speak against at the time. It should be fair and equitable for everybody, all municipalities, and not just funded for municipalities under 3,000.
Just here, Council. So with this specific one, I mean, I think what council has got to keep in mind is Alberta Munis only has so many resources and staffing and stuff. So I think it's important for municipalities to make sure what we want them to lobby the provincial government on is meaningful and impactful versus sending their staff going in a variety of different directions.
Mhm.
So in specific to B7, because I know what the province will respond this with, this is what the LGFF funding is for you to buy capital infrastructure for your operation. So the province will say the funding's there already. And further to that, I mean, if they do decide to give funding for municipalities under 3,000 for AFRAC systems, well, there's only so much pool of money. So if they provide a special grant for municipalities under 3,000, that's going to come out of that pool of money that should be going to all municipalities. So not that it's a hard issue. I'm sure council doesn't want to speak about not having fire departments have the right equipment, but it's got to be fair and equitable across the province. So.
Oh, for sure. Councillor Hutchinson, do you have more to add to that? Just your light is on.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So I think definitely we'll have to have, just when we're there, have some conversation around the table when it comes to some of these. But maybe what we'll do is, does anyone have any clarity for anything that they are needing when it comes to any of these, so that maybe Mr. Kraus can help with? I mean, I think otherwise maybe we're just gonna end up having conversation when we're there and kind of go from there. I think that's what we did last year when we went through this, was just whether there was questions or needed clarity on any of them. If I remember correctly.
I will not be at the conference.
Okay.
So I just let you know, but if you want me just to quickly go through some here.
Sure.
With council, just something to keep for council to be in mind.
Sure.
So B5, that's the RETA, so I mean, that's CAPE for us. So I mean, it's a request for additional funding for CAPE, so council may want to support that, and maybe if they get additional funding that benefits our municipality where they can have more resources versus being spread out over a large area, so. B6, I mean, that's increased funding for FCSS. This comes to AB Munis all the time. The only thing to be cautious there for council is if the province increases their funding we also have to increase our funding. So there is a budgetary implication for advocating for this also. B8 talks about declining fire department services across Alberta, and really what the resolution there is for them to lobby the federal government of giving income tax, a greater income tax break there. Alberta Munis is not really in the position to advocate the federal government. They advocate the provincial government. So to me, this type of resolution should be going to FCM, who lobbies the federal government. So just a consideration there. B12, which is permanent and supportive housing and capital operating funding. What's problematic about this motion is that it's geared to only hub municipalities. So they're talking Edmonton, Red Deer, Calgary is what they're lobbying for, but we face the same issue in our community. So council may want to ask for an amendment to that resolution for any municipality, for increased funding or support in supportive housing. On B16, it's cultural, recreation, and sport facility infrastructure deficit report card. And really what this is trying to do is to gather all the recreation infrastructure deficits across Alberta and lobby the provincial government for more recreational funding. I think we already do that. Maybe it's not focused on that, but every municipality does their TCA and depreciation of those assets. So I think that information is there, so this is more specific. So it's probably more lobbying for more infrastructure funds for us as municipalities to use in the best way that we see locally versus a specific type of infrastructure. And C1 is the financial disclosure of asset retirement obligations. So that's it's a new requirement under PSAP. Is it PSAP? PSAB. For us to, and we went through this with council, that we have to assess all of our buildings and determine what remedial work we would have to do once they reach the end of life, the asbestos and stuff like that. So we're already doing that. Every municipality across Alberta needs to do that. And this one is just a request for additional funding for the small municipalities to meet this requirement. And again, that goes back to the same as, the AFRAC system, where you as a municipality have to take on the responsibilities that you're required to, and within the financial means you can. I mean, just because you're small doesn't mean you should get additional funding. You just got to live within your means, because if smaller municipalities get additional funding for all of this, it's just taking funding out of the pot for every other municipality in Alberta. So just some of my thoughts on them for council.
Well,
So-
thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I'm sure the rest of council does as well. I have a question as well, just when it comes to, because our resolution is the first one, do we need to discuss now who is going to be presenting that?
That would be.
Now would be the time? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
My preference would be, since it was Councillor Phillips that had brought it up, that he be the one that speak on it. So as long as the rest of council and Councillor Phillips feels comfortable with that.
I would be comfortable doing that for sure.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. So do we have any further discussion on any of these resolutions? Anything that someone wants to highlight or ask questions about before we move on? Okay, seeing none, then I am looking for a motion, and we're just accepting for information then, Mr. Kraus? Okay. Councillor Phillips?
I will make a motion to accept item 8.1, the resolutions book, as information.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor and none opposed, and that is carried. So moving ahead, we have correspondence for information. So is there anything from 9.1 to 9.5 that anyone wants to speak on? Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I just had a question on process. So under the FCSS minutes, there's discussion on an additional position. how does that work if it's a board decision on filling that position, but yet it's a town employee? I don't understand how, like, does that come up if the board approves it, but then it still comes to us under our budget or at service level? Or, I just, some clarity.
I can probably clarify that one. So this was the initial discussion at FCSS about potentially having a new position there because of the increased demand that's happening. So if this does go forward, these dollars would be coming from the FCSS budget. So there'd be no more request asked from the town or the county or the Village of Caroline. It would come right from the FCSS budget, which in essence would mean less money for granting.
I'm sorry, it's still confusing because that is a position paid for by the town. So does it, and I know that's kind of getting into operations.
Yeah, no, FCSS is a little bit of, I won't say odd, but I just did, I guess. But unique type of arrangement. So FCS is a regional board, a regional service that's managed by the FCSS board. That goes through an 80%, 20% funding, 80% from the province, 20% from the 3 municipalities, part of it. So the board is mandated with identifying and the services that FCSS is going to provide. So in that sense, if they feel the services require an additional employee, that is an FCSS board decision. Now, if they go outside of that 20% municipal funding for this position, then it would come to council because now it's a budget implication to us, the municipality. And then council would either approve the additional funding or decline the additional funding. And then they would go back to the FCSS board whether they want to readjust for that position or relook at that position. It is, because even though the FCSS employees are town employees and they fall under our policies and procedures, they also answer to a board. So sometimes that does get conflictual or, well, conflictual is probably the word because they may not always be in sync. You know, a good example on the other side how it works is our library board. So the town creates the library through bylaw under the Libraries Act. And under the Libraries Act, they need a library board. And so a board is established and actually members are appointed by council. But the library staff are not town staff. They're actually staff of the library board. And that takes away that portion. So with the library, they just come to town each year and ask for the funding that they would require or want. And it's up to council just to approve that block funding and not get into their operations because that's under the board. It's a little bit cleaner that way.
Oh, for sure. Okay, is there anything else that anyone wants to highlight? Thank you for that, Mr. Kraus. From 9.1 down to 9.5. Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to accept for information. Go ahead, Councillor Schiffel.
Thank you. I will so move that we accept all the correspondence from 9.1 to 9.5 as information.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, and that is carried. So now moving on, we have come to activity and committee reports. So I do have my report under 10.1. If anyone has any questions for me, I just do want to highlight, and I know Councillor Hutchinson will speak to it as well, but I just wanted to say when it comes to the Alberta Day event, a big thank you to all the organizations and the volunteers that were there. I think we were both, and our whole committee was very happy with how it all went and with the turnout. But other than that, if anyone has any questions for me, otherwise I'm looking for a motion. Counselor Phillips?
I'll make a motion to accept item 10.1 for information.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, and that is carried. So moving on to 10.2. So Counselor Ald, anything you want to highlight in yours?
No, it's pretty short.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Hutchinson, anything you would like to highlight?
Sure. Some of the updates on the Rocky Senior Housing, I know the minutes are in there, but they're from June. So at this time, as of beginning of this month, the lodge is 100% full. It's the first time since 2019 that all the rooms are full, and there is a waiting list. Typically, the waiting list doesn't start until as it starts getting cold, but we're already got a waiting list started there. We've had discussions with the Assistant Deputy Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Housing on discussions of a regional housing plan and what that may look like. This started with the Caroline project discussion as that grant was denied. So we met with the minister at that time, or earlier on as well, to see where we think how Rocky Senior Housing would fit into that, and we've been discussing a regional approach, and that may look like not necessarily one big project, but it may look like additions here, maybe Leslieville, Caroline, and you can take, 3 or 4 smaller projects as long as it's under, so many houses or so many resident accommodations in each community, and putting it all together and putting that into one application, but that'll be ongoing discussions for that. I did the 1799 gala with, I was acting Mayor Caprero's date for the night, and it was a really, really super good evening.
Yes.
Rocky Learning Council, we've been meeting, preparations for the upcoming year. There's a Jana Thompson, the ED there, will be leaving as of next week. So we've had to do a little shift in staffing on making that go, but we're excited to see what's going to happen there. And also the grand opening Edward Jones tennis courts was lots of fun. Acting Mayor Caprero and I didn't know we could play tennis as well as we did, but we had fun. And then our big event, the Alberta Day Festival, we all felt, as Marley said, an absolute success. We had 2 cakes that serve 100 people each. I would say we probably served 175 pieces of that. And then what was left, we brought to the movie in the field that night. So it got all eaten. So in the kids zone, the face painter said she probably did 60 to 70 kids face painting. Because we were spread out the way we were, it was hard to keep track of, seeing how many people were at the top end and the bottom. But the CPOs did make the comment with our handprints on the cruiser that typically the fire department gets all the attention and the kids all go to the fire truck. And she said the fire truck guys were coming over to take kids from the CPOs so they could show them their displays. So that was a real positive. I had noticed later on in the rec report that there were 91 free swims that day, or 91 kids or people that took advantage of the free swim that day. So that was a very positive as well. And about 200 for the movie. The movie company said, or the screen company said, that the last event they did in another municipality only had about 60 people show up for theirs. So it was very, very positive. There were kids in pajamas with pillows and blankets, and it was really good. And then the highlight of the night was the Aurora's overtop, and then Starlink satellites was about 10 in a row in the sky. So we're playing ET, and all the kids were like, not sure what was going on, if it was ET or what it was. So very positive. We're meeting on the 17th, and we are looking forward to bringing more ideas to the table. Not sure what that looks like yet, but an exciting time for our community.
It really was great. Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Councillor Musker, anything that you'd like to highlight in yours?
No, it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Thanks.
No, thank you. Councillor Phillips, anything you'd like to speak on in yours?
Yes, so the Cape Transportation and Logistics Committee that I'm a part of, we had a meeting back in September. We also had a meeting yesterday in Red Deer as well. And the funding from the provincial government for a grant to update the 2015 study of the project that we're not calling the House Pass anymore, we're calling it the Connections Corridor. So if you hear the word Connections Corridor, that's referring to what's formerly known as the House Pass. And that means we can now put out for request for proposal for updating those numbers. And that's the first step towards getting things rolling with the provincial government, First Nations, BC government, federal government. But getting that study done first is the biggest first step. So that's on its way and happening. And as far as Community Futures, I'm now the vice chair of Community Futures. And anyone that's interested, the Community Futures is having a symposium in Red Deer. Every year a different CF office puts on the symposium, and this year it's Red Deer's turn. So next week from Tuesday till Friday is a Community Futures Symposium in Red Deer if anyone is interested in attending.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I think that's it for the council report. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. I will make the motion that 10.2, we accept the council activity and committee reports as information. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, and that is carried. So 11, we have administrative reports, 11.1 department reports. Mr. Kraus, unless anyone's got questions. Go ahead, Councillor Phillips.
I just have one question, and I'm not sure if Mr. Ament can answer this or not. The Junior B practice time, did they manage to have a meeting and get that?
I can just
sorted
answer,
out?
Wes, if you want. Yes, it's resolved.
It is, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. The two organizations resolved it among themselves. So.
Excellent. Councillor Schippel.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. One of the on your question, Councillor Phillips, how do we determine ice times with all the different user groups? What's their protocol for that? I've got a few people who indicated that the process is maybe not as streamlined as it could be. So I'm just sort of getting a...
No, so council actually has a policy of how we allocate ice time. It's generally, well, it's based on age. So the younger children get the earlier ice time, and it works its way up. But it's there's more to the policy than that. Obviously, it's a little complex. But Mr. Ament, he can come talk about it. But we meet with the user groups each year to work out that ice time among the organizations. Do you want to add to that, Mr. Ament?
Sure. I mean, Rocio identified, yes, there are priorities, and age is one of the highest priorities. There's an order of how the ice gets allocated. Actually, the Junior B team is number one of allocating their game times. Well, actually, it goes town projects first. So if we know of any town events, they take priority. Second is tournaments, because we need to get those slotted into the overall schedule. Then it's the Junior B games, because they set their league games early in they set them in July for the upcoming season. So we slot those games in, and then it goes to practices. And then, so the priorities for practices go to our minor sports organizations and youth organizations, get their practices allocated. And then it goes to the adults, and the sanctioned adults, which is our Junior B team, get their practices allocated. Then it goes to your recreational adult team. So we have a process identified in the policy. And it generally, as at our ice user meetings, we have 3 or 4 throughout the year. First one's right after the season ends in April, early May. They get together, review of how the season go. Is there anything that is, that we need to be aware of for next season? We're thinking already more than a year in advance. And then they meet in July, early August, just sort of firm up, do you know what your numbers are, the number of teams you're gonna have? How might it impact last year's schedule? And we've got a template that we follow, and it changes occasionally from year to year. But it's reviewed at that time. All the players are at the table. They have the discussions with our scheduler, which is our guest services coordinator, looks after all of our ice scheduling. And then they go through that process. And then really the schedules are twofold, because we put the one ice surface in early. The Bunch Arena went in early, so we're utilizing the ice the best we can with the requests. The second ice surface is in now, and it's usually, again, based on need. And then the final, the schedules really aren't set until all of the minor hockey's league games are scheduled, and they sometimes don't get them till the end of October. They submit their games to their leagues, they're allocated, their games are set, and then but by the time we come to the end of October, schedule's set for the balance of the season. What teams or organizations have requested, that's what they get, that's what they pay for until their seasons start to end, which usually can be mid-February. Some of the teams get knocked out of playoffs, but usually end of February, early March, it tails off. And then we also set, well, ice is going in on these days, this is when we anticipate the ice coming out, unless there's a community request. And at that time, it's based on selling a certain amount of ice in order to make it financially feasible for us to keep the ice in earlier or later. Does that answer your question? So we have a policy that we follow, and generally, like in this case with the junior Bs and the minor hockey came and said, based on the number of teams we have, this is the amount of ice that we think we will need, and so that's where we follow the policy. The junior Bs, they weren't happy that, minor hockey needs more ice, and they come back and say, well, no, you're bumping our times to later for following the policy to the letter of the law. That's where it would go, because it's based on age.
Okay.
But, we allow those groups to sit face to face. We offered to meet with them and have a meeting. In the end, they came to a resolution. Maybe it doesn't follow the letter of the policy, but we allow the groups to meet and have that collaboration between them to make it work for both.
Councillor Schipel?
Yes, so if I wanted to have ice time during the course of the winter, how do I know to sign up, or what's the process in knowing where and when to knock on someone's door to get into the list or into the queue to get ice time?
The earlier the better. Obviously, we have our meetings, we have templates that, based on, past history. But if we have a new group, like as an example, last year, we had Ringette came to the table and say, hey, we're starting a new program, can we get ice? And so we looked at that, and, we were able to accommodate, their fledgling group. They had managed to get ice time on a Friday at 4 till 5 for their practice. And then once the season gets started, and the league schedules come out, there's always open ice. It's just we can't sometimes commit to that at the start of the season. Well, here's what we've got, here's what you'll get, and here's how quickly we can do that. So anytime we have new organizations come to the table, well, we bring that to the earliest ice user meeting that we can and say, okay, there has to be some give and take because we only have a certain amount of ice. And right now, it's all sold.
And so if somebody wants to make a request, is it just they call guest services at the recreation center?
Yeah, and our guest service coordinator is the first point of contact because she's the one that does the scheduling. And then she'll usually deal with those requests individually. And then her first call often is to the other groups saying, we'll get a new group, minor hockey, junior Bs, rec hockey. How do we work together to accommodate a new request? Sometimes a real challenge. I don't know if I would want her job, but
Fair.
So do we advertise that so you know where you phone or what you do to get into the queue? How would, me being new to town and I wanted ice time, how do I know, short of just knowledge of going to the rec center, but short of that, do we advertise or do anything, or is it you come as you come, and if you're lucky, you're lucky?
well,
and you get ice
I
time?
guess ultimately, somebody comes to the community and wants ice, the first place they go is to the arena, and that's where they're situated, and, yeah, do we advertise, we haven't, but it's probably something that we could look at, say, FYI, our ice user meeting is happening on these dates, if you're interested, you're welcome to attend.
Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Kraus in regards to any of the department reports? Counselor Schipel?
If I could, to Mr. Kraus, one of the things that we discussed prior was the destination levy. And we just briefly touched on it the other day, and we're gonna look into, for the hotels. Is there anything new and exciting on that in terms of, are we pushing along, or what's the protocol there, and what's the timeline as to maybe for that to happen?
Yeah, so the initial conversations been had with the hotels, and the package has gone out of what the town is looking at for a tourism levy, basically. Our economic development officer is going back out again this month to readdress and talk to the hotel owners to talk about the program.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any other questions, Counselor Alt?
Thank you, Acting Mayor. In the airport report, we received the information back from my admin inquiry regarding incidents at the airport. Mr. Lindsay noted 3 different reported incidences. But what happens to those incidents? Once there's a complaint put in, what repercussions are handed out? Like, has there been any follow-up? The report goes in and it's in, but what happens to it after that?
So if it's an aeronautical incident, Mr. Lindsay makes note of the incident and forwards it up to Transportation Canada. And because it falls in under federal jurisdiction, it's up to Transport Canada to handle that incident and ever how they want to do so.
So it's totally out of the airport manager's hands at that point, once he puts in the complaint.
Yep.
Okay. And there's no report back to the manager about any actions taken, or?
No. I could ask him to inquire, but, they probably wouldn't release any information unless they actually took some action, which you can actually go on to Transport Canada's website, and they have a list of investigations into incidents and the outcome of those.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Mr. Kraus in regards to any of the department reports? If not, I'm looking for a motion, please, to accept for information. Counselor Phillips, somebody?
I'll make a motion to accept item 11.1, the department reports as information.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, that is carried. So now moving on, we have 12, the action list. So Mr. Kraus, if you want to touch on that,
Yeah.
please.
So thank you, Acting Mayor. So for the open items, so the landmark public engagement, that's been done, and we're going to discuss it with council at the strat planning meeting on September 16th. I believe is the date, because that's actually in council's strategic plan. The next one down is the municipal energy manager position. That was presented today for council. And then the other one was the energy efficiency grant report. So what council has postponed that item until council receives the facility life cycle assessment report. That is complete and is being presented to council at the October GPC.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions or anything for Mr. Kraus at this time? Otherwise, I am looking for a motion, please. Counselor Alt?
I'll make the motion to accept the action list from September 10th as information.
Thank you for your motion. Do we have any discussion on that? And seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. Those in favor? And none opposed, that is carried. Do we have any notices of motion for today? Okay, seeing none. We have no closed sessions, so I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting today at 3:07. Thank you, everyone.